You ever noticed how almost every piece of software you use now asks for a monthly payment? Like you open an app thinking you're about to buy it just once, like we used to do. Pay $40 or $60, and that's it, done, yours forever. But instead, you see something like $9.99 per month. Or worse, $19.99 per month billed annually. And suddenly, you're doing math in your head. Wait, that's $120 a year for something that used to cost $50. And it's not just one app either. Your photo editor is a subscription. Your note-taking app is a subscription. Your project management tool, subscription. Your password manager, subscription. Even software that used to come in a box at the store, like Microsoft Office, now lives in the cloud and charges you every single month. And if you're anything like me, you've probably had that quiet moment where you stare at your bank statement and think, why is everything a subscription now? Because honestly, it didn't used to be like this. There was a time when you bought software the same way you bought a toaster. One payment, done. My name's Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, business psychology, and the weird little ways companies slowly change how we pay for things without most of us even noticing. And the shift from one-time software purchases to subscriptions might be one of the most successful business transformations ever pulled off, not because customers asked for it, but because software companies realized something powerful about human behavior and about predictable money. Once you understand why this happened, you start seeing subscriptions everywhere, and more importantly, you start realizing when they're actually worth it and when you're just quietly renting something you thought you owned. So let's talk about what really killed one-time software purchases, because the answer is a lot more interesting than just greedy companies. 1. The problem with selling software once. Let's start with something that sounds obvious but turns out to be a massive business problem. Imagine you're running a software company. You spend 3 years building an amazing product. You hire engineers, designers, support staff. The whole thing probably costs millions of dollars. Then finally, launch day arrives. You sell the software for $80, and a customer buys it. Great, you just made $80. But here's the weird part. That same customer might use your software for the next 8 years. They might install updates. They might contact support. They might expect bug fixes. But they only paid you once. From a customer perspective, that feels fair. You bought something, you own it. From a business perspective, it's kind of terrifying because companies have ongoing costs, servers, updates, security patches, compatibility with new operating systems. But if customers never upgrade, the company stops making money from them. This is exactly what used to happen with old software. People would buy something like Photoshop once and then keep using that same version for 5 or 10 years. And companies hated that, not because they were greedy, but because their revenue was wildly unpredictable. Some years they'd make tons of money from new releases. Other years, almost nothing. And investors hate unpredictability, which leads to the next reason subscriptions took over. 2. Businesses love predictable money. Let me ask you a simple question. Would you rather run a business that earns $10 million one year, $3 million the next, $15 million the next, or a business that earns $1 million every month like clockwork? Most companies will choose the second option every single time. Predictable revenue is incredibly valuable. It allows companies to hire confidently, invest in development, plan years ahead. This is why investors love subscription businesses so much, because instead of wondering, will customers buy again, they already know the answer. The payments just keep coming. Streaming services figured this out, gyms figured this out, and eventually, software companies realized something important. If they could convert their customers to subscribers, their entire business would become more stable. And once a few companies proved it worked, everyone else followed. 3. The Adobe moment that changed everything. If there's one moment that really accelerated this shift, it's Adobe. For years, Adobe sold software the traditional way. Photoshop cost hundreds of dollars, Illustrator cost hundreds more. Designers would buy them once and then stick with that version forever. But in 2013, Adobe made a move that shocked a lot of people. They killed the standalone version of Photoshop. Instead, they launched Adobe Creative Cloud, subscription only. Designers were furious. Forums exploded. People complained about renting software. Some swore they would never switch. But Adobe knew something most users didn't. Once professionals rely on a tool, switching is painful. Your files are in that ecosystem. Your skills are built around that interface. Your workflow depends on it. And slowly, people accepted it. Today, Adobe's subscription model generates billions in recurring revenue, and other software companies watched that success very closely. 4. Subscriptions quietly make you pay more. Now, here's the part that's a little uncomfortable. Subscriptions often cost way more over time. Let's do a simple example. Old software model, you buy a program for $80, maybe upgrade every 4 years. That's roughly $20 per year. Subscription model, $10 per month. That's $120 per year, 6 times more. But here's the trick. Most people don't feel it the same way because monthly payments feel small. $10 doesn't feel like a big decision. Our brains treat subscriptions differently from purchases. Behavioral economists call this payment smoothing. Small recurring payments feel less painful than large one-time costs, which is why people subscribe to things they rarely use: streaming services, fitness apps, cloud storage, and yes, software. Before you know it, you're paying hundreds of dollars per year for tools you once owned outright. 5. The cloud made subscriptions possible. Another huge reason subscriptions exploded is something called cloud computing. Old software used to live entirely on your computer, but modern software often runs partly on remote servers. Think about tools like Google Docs, Figma, Notion, Dropbox. These services constantly sync data, store files, and run complex processes in the background. That infrastructure costs money every single month. Servers aren't free. Bandwidth isn't free. Maintenance isn't free. So companies argue that subscriptions make sense because the product is now a service, not just a piece of software. And honestly, sometimes that's true. Real-time collaboration, automatic backups, AI features. Those things require ongoing resources. But of course, that's not the whole story, because even software that doesn't rely heavily on the cloud still switched to subscriptions, which brings us to another reason. Subscriptions lock customers in. Once you stop paying for subscription software, something interesting happens. You lose access. Your files might still exist, but the tool itself stops working. That creates something economists call switching costs. The longer you use a subscription tool, the harder it becomes to leave. Your data lives there. Your habits depend on it. Your team might rely on it. And companies know this, which means subscriptions don't just generate predictable revenue, they create customer lock-in. The longer you stay, the more likely you are to keep paying. 7. Subscription explosion. Once software companies realized all these advantages, the floodgates opened. Suddenly, everything became a subscription. Password managers, writing apps, budgeting tools, video editors, even simple utilities. Some companies genuinely provide continuous improvements. Others, honestly, just use subscriptions because the business model is so attractive. And now we live in a world where your digital life is basically a stack of monthly charges. $5 here, $10 there, $20 somewhere else. Individually small, but collectively, it adds up fast. And once you start noticing them, you might be surprised how many you don't actually need anymore. So when you ask the question, why did software companies kill one-time purchases, the answer isn't just greed. It's a combination of several powerful forces. Subscriptions give companies predictable revenue, which investors love. They allow businesses to support ongoing development and cloud infrastructure. They make customers stick around longer because leaving becomes inconvenient. And perhaps most importantly, monthly payments feel small enough that most people don't think too hard about them. But But once you see this system clearly, something interesting happens. You start looking at subscriptions differently. Instead of asking, can I afford this? You start asking, will I actually use this enough every month to justify paying forever? Because that's what subscriptions really are, forever payments. Some of them are absolutely worth it. Tools you use every single day, software that genuinely improves your work or creativity. Those can be incredible investments. But others, honestly, they just sit there, charging you month after month, long after you stopped opening the app. And honestly, the real skill in the modern digital economy isn't avoiding subscriptions entirely. That's basically impossible now. The real skill is choosing them deliberately, knowing which ones deserve a permanent place in your life and which ones are just another small leak in your financial bucket. Because those little monthly charges, they add up faster than most people realize. And once you start noticing them, you might be surprised how many you don't actually need.